Well, I think it's about that time. We have, according to the list, 140 participants and growing. So I want a moment to quickly introduce myself and tell you a little bit about this professional development series before we get started with the actual training. So my name is Mark Cormier, and I'm the head of training and professional development at the Centro Cultural Costarricense Norteamericano. And I'm sure many of you have been to our PD Talk events in person before, but I know that quite a few of you are joining us from outside of Costa Rica. And so you might not be familiar with what this is. We at our binational center have a professional development series that we offer as an extension of our National Conference for Teachers of English. And we offer free professional development workshops in person every 2 months at our center here in San Jose. A couple of months ago, we started thinking that we wanted to offer this to even more Costa Rica, San Jose rather, could also take advantage of this. And we thought about adding some additional professional development events online. So this is our inaugural event, our first PD Talk online. And it's so cool that this happened right when it was most needed. So we were already planning on doing this online starting a couple of months ago. And it turns out that it was the best decision we could have made, because now we couldn't actually do it face-to-face, even if we wanted to in this moment, due to the current health situation. So with that said, we're super proud and happy to be offering this service, not only to the people that normally come and see us face-to-face, but ones who live much farther away. So to all of you, welcome. And just wanted to take a moment to mention something regarding our National Conference for Teachers of English. This professional development series is an extension of that. And due to the situation with the coronavirus, we have had to postpone our national conference, which was originally scheduled for May of this year. And we will be sending out an official communication later this week with the dates of the new conference. So it will still happen. It's still going to be a 2-day event, and it's still going to be a really great opportunity to network and share and learn from each other. But we will have to, unfortunately, do it later this year. So stay tuned, and you will receive more information about that very soon. So I would like to take a moment to introduce our speaker. He's a co-worker and a good friend. His name is Jonathan Acuña Solano. He is a senior English language instructor and a professor at Universidad Latina de Costa Rica. He teaches in the pre and graduate English language teaching programs. And he is also an online English teacher for Laureate Languages Online. And I know him as the head of our curriculum development department here at Centro Cultural. He has a master's degree in educational sciences with an emphasis in English language teaching. And he also has an MA in linguistics and a BA in English from the University of Costa Rica. So today he's going to be speaking to us on the topic of core beliefs on online education, what an effective online language class entails. So without further ado, let's give a virtual round of applause for Jonathan Acuña.
Well, thank you, Mark. So definitely we have to start our session this afternoon. So hopefully everything is going to go quite well, and everybody will have some interesting ideas as to continue teaching online. Okay, you already know. So this is called Core Beliefs on Online Education, what an effective online language class entails. And this is pretty much what we are going to be doing. I have included here, obviously, a little bit about myself. I guess you already know. Mark was telling a little bit about who I am. So as he said, I'm a Laureate Languages Online instructor. I work at Centro Cultural Costarricense Norteamericano as the head of curriculum development. And at the same time, I'm an English professor. It's been quite a long time since I've been working for Universidad Latina. And that's pretty much what I do. This is more or less what the agenda for our session is going to be. So everybody will have a chance of getting to interact a little bit with online education. So there is going to be a short, very short survey, okay, at the very beginning. then we're going to be having, and this is like part of the most important thing that we're going to be doing this afternoon, which is you working on online sample class. So I'll be the teacher, you'll be my students, and we are going to be going through these different stages of an online class. Immediately after that, we will have your evaluation. So that's why we have here participants class evaluation. So you're going to be working with other peers so you can actually pay attention to what happens in this sample class. Then we will have a little bit of a discussion, core beliefs around online class development. Okay, that's pretty much like part of the things I'm going to be explaining to you. And obviously towards the end, we will have the chance of asking and answering questions. Okay, so first things first, and this is the one thing that I want you to please go online now that you are in front of your computers. And I want you to please, complete this survey very quickly. Let me share the link with you by using the chat so everybody has a chance of getting the link. Okay, could you please, okay, go to the chat, okay, click on the link and answer these 4 questions very quickly, please. It's just 4 questions. Yes, that's the idea. Okay, in the meantime, you can finish with that. So remember what I was saying to you, what we're going to be doing now, going back into my agenda is you people are going to become my students for a little bit of time. So let's see, like about half an hour. And then we're going to be working on Warmer on a language task and on a production task. And that's the whole thing in connection to this thing. If you haven't finished with this, that's okay. We can continue with this later on. But that's just to have an idea who is in this moment in our webinar. Okay, remember what I said to you, this is going to be our sample class and I'm going to be your instructor for the next 30 minutes. So I would like you to participate as much as possible, okay? Well, good afternoon, everyone. We have our class this evening, and this evening is going to be about occupations. The very first thing that we are going to be paying attention to is also take a look at our class agenda for today. So what is going to be happening in our class? Well, there are going to be 3 different things that we are going to be paying attention to. The very first thing is we're going to be reviewing jobs and occupations. The second thing we will all do together is work on a language task. So we will be discussing routines. And the third task, which is going to be our production, in which you and your partners will create a job interview. Okay, so this is pretty much what is going to be happening during our class this evening. Okay, people, I want you to pay attention to this simple activity that we have right now here, where I included some pictures, as you can see them over here, correct? But at the same time, I've also included what these jobs or occupations are and the places where these people might be working. And at the same time, I just included a very simple conversation so you can guide yourselves in your practice. Okay, but what I want you to do now is this. I need you to make a screenshot, please. Yeah, everybody is going to be required to make a screenshot of what you are seeing right now. And in a moment, I'm going to be sending you to a breakout room where you will participate with the partners and you will go all through this. The idea here is that, as is stated here, you will be asking about these people, okay, what they do, where they work, and you will have to state where they work. Just as a simple example before we actually begin, so let's pay attention to the first picture we have here, this one over here. So we can simply say, okay, what does she do? Because it is a woman that you see over there. And then you will simply say, okay, she is an architect. And where does she work? Well, she works in a construction company. So this is more or less what you have to do with your partners in your breakout rooms. So you need to be switching from student A to the student B, and we can work on this as of now, okay? Is that clear? Yes? Okay. Well, people, remember, everybody's supposed to have a screenshot. And now I'm asking you to please join a breakout room where you're going to be participating with 4 to 3 partners. So please go ahead. I'm going to be giving you some 5 minutes. So let's begin, please. Join your groups, join your partners.
Okay, everybody. So it seems like some people are still in their breakout rooms, and I'm sure we'll get it started with Jonathan right now.
Exactly. So they will be coming back into the main room in any moment, and that's okay. All right, people. I need a couple of volunteers for, paying attention to one of these simple conversations. The first one was my example to you, so I would like to begin with this person over here. Could I have 2 volunteers, please? You need to open your microphones, remember.
Hello.
Okay, hello.
Okay, go ahead, Oscar, and I listen to someone else.
Me,
All
I
right.
think.
Okay, so I'm gonna be A, and it's the second person, right? So what does she do?
Who is the
I
next?
think she's a flight attendant.
Okay,
And where does she work?
She works at the airport.
at the airport. Okay, thank you. Okay, what about with the next one? One more couple of people here, please.
I can.
Okay,
I
Jonathan
can, I can be B.
and Claudia. Perfect. Okay, Jonathan, you begin.
Okay. So, Claudia, what does he do?
She's a farmer, or he's a farmer.
A former.
Uh-huh. And where does he work?
He works on a farm.
Okay, and that's correct. Okay, this is to give you an idea again. Now I'm talking to you as we have to pay attention to the exercise should go in that direction. It's quite linear, very simple. So people, let's go again. Now you're my students again. Let's go into the second activity that I have for you today. It's always important that you make a screenshot of this so you can pay attention to the situation and you will remember your role when you get into the breakout rooms. We will talk about your daily routines, and this is going to be an interview. If you are a student A, okay, you need to ask the partner the questions below and find out about your partner's job. If you are a student B, you are a worker, and you need to ask your partner the questions below and find out about your partner's studies. So pay attention that this is different in terms of routines. The first thing that we're paying attention to, as I said, is this is an interview. A student A is a student, and you ask the questions about a student B's job. If you're a student B, you will ask the questions, okay? Keeping in mind that you're a worker, but your partner is a student. So you will ask him about his or her studies. So once again, before we move to the next activity, I need you to please make a screenshot. Okay, do make a screenshot, everyone, please. So we can profit from this exercise, please. All right. Okay, I'm assuming that everyone at this point has the screenshot, and I'm going to be moving you again into breakout rooms so you can again discuss with your partners. Please make sure that you actually go to your breakout room so your partner is not alone waiting for you. Most of this breakout rooms have 4 members, so please let's try to get there. Okay, people, let's do it, please. All right, please join your partners, join your groups, and let's get to
Jonathan?
work. Yes.
People are asking, how do they share their screen, or how do they share the document once they're in the group?
Okay. Oops, somebody is writing on the board.
So
Okay.
at the bottom of your screen, you do have a little icon that says share screen or compartir pantalla. That's how you share it.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So people, please join your partners, join your groups. You'll be having some 6 minutes for the activity. Go ahead. Okay, little by little, the rest of the people will join in the class. Again, I'm going to be assuming, as I said to you, that you are my students. And for the sake of the exercise, there's need to be a section of feedback, immediate feedback immediately after the exercise is over. And then I can be explaining to my students things such as, okay, don't forget that you need to give full answers. Even though you have a correct answer, for example, when your partner says, what do you do? And you say teacher, it doesn't mean that you know how to use the structure. It simply means that you know how to answer because you're understanding. So sometimes we need to remind our students that we need them to use full structures. And then you can point out anything that happens and that you can pay attention to. Of course, with a large class like ours this evening, it's obviously simply impossible to try to cover as many things. Obviously, we're thinking that hopefully you don't have more than 30 students. Still, 30 is a very big amount of students in a classroom. But assuming that that is the norm, so again, at least you will be able to divide the class in smaller groups. See, I haven't been able to visit all the different groups that we have because it's simply impossible. But that's because of this, the nature of this particular talk. So anyway, at this point, as I was mentioning before, I'm talking to you like teachers, we had a feedback section with the students, and we will tell the students what we observe, what they need to pay attention to, and so on. Here you will tell them, okay, don't forget how to pronounce. You don't say psychology, you say psychology. So see, like you will pay attention to these details that you observe in the different breakout rooms. Okay, let me move to the next activity. Now I'm talking to you like if you were my students, all right? And in the next activity, this is what is going to be happening. You are going to be obviously working in small groups. And in these groups, you will be obviously preparing a job interview using the 5 questions I have provided below. You can feel free to include more questions if you think it is necessary, and you will have about 6 minutes to prepare your presentation. And I hope that when we come back into the main room, several of you can give a short presentation using these questions over here. All right, the usual thing. So don't forget, please, to make a screenshot of what you're seeing right now. And if possible, when you go into your breakout rooms, one of you will be able to display or show the picture so everybody can work on it. Okay? You ready? Okay, so once again, I'm going to be giving you, remember, 6 minutes as it's stated over here, and you will have a time to complete this task with your partners. Okay, people, please join your groups, join your partners. You have now 6 minutes. Yes, people, like now everybody is coming back into the main room as Mark was mentioning. Okay, this is where we were. And I would like to have a couple of you giving a short presentation of your job interview. Can any of the groups where you, people you were working with would like to give a very short presentation so we can pay attention to it?
And in order to help you guys, if you were to raise your hand so that we can unmute you. Okay, Mario says that his microphone is not working very well, but then we have Mauricio. He is raising his hand, so I'm going to unmute him.
Okay, good.
Okay, hello everyone. Is Mario there?
It's actually Luis.
Okay, hello Luis. Are you ready for the interview?
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, Luis, I would like to know, why do you want to work for this company?
Sure. A couple of the reasons is because I like the benefits and the promotion policies that you have.
Interesting. Tell me a little bit about your work experience. I mean, where did you work before?
Sure. Actually, I've been working as a teacher for 10 years, teaching languages to people in 3 different countries. I worked for Oxford University Press for the last 10 years in Brazil.
Okay. Wow, impressive. And how much do you expect to make in this company?
I always like to think that I'll be rewarded according to my responsibilities and my previous experience. So I don't have a formed figure.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your future plans. Where do you see yourself in 10 years, Luis?
Sure. I think I would like to have climbed up the professional ladder in the company with all of you and to be an important member of the team, hopefully.
Okay. And how about your education? What did you study before? Or what are you studying now?
I first graduated in journalism here in Costa Rica. I went on to study broadcasting in the United States, and then my formation as an English teacher was with Oxford University Press in Brazil.
Okay. And before we finish, Luis, I would like to know, what do you consider your greatest strength?
My greatest strength would be my ability to manage time efficiently, which is what allows me to do everything else as best as I can.
Okay,
Okay,
really
Luis,
good.
thanks a lot
Thank
for
you.
coming. This is the end of the interview. All
Thank you.
righty.
Thank you. Okay, and assuming now I'm talking to you as teachers, and assuming that we have obviously overcome this phase in which, several of your students are giving their short presentations, we can provide them with feedback. The same thing that we did before. So we can talk about like things that were not correctly structured. We're talking about grammar. Things that were not correctly pronounced. A little bit of pronunciation might be necessary, or any other thing that you think it's important at that specific point. Okay. Obviously, we wish we have gifted students like you people, and then like teaching a class face-to-face or online will be more than extraordinary. But the most important thing here now is you evaluating this class. And I have here basically 5 different questions that I want you to discuss with other people. And you can come up with some simple answers in connection to this. The questions are very simple as you can see them here. But as I mentioned before, it's always a good idea that you make a screenshot too, so you can go into your breakout rooms to discuss with your partners for a while. Okay? So I don't know, people, if you are ready with your screenshots. Yes? Okay, assuming that you're ready, please, you're going to be seeing this little, announcement that you need to join a group. So remember, I'm going to be giving you no more than 6 minutes to come up with some answers. Okay, you don't need to write down anything. So please join your partners, join your groups, and I'll get to see you back here in about 6 minutes. Well, now that we're back in the main room and going back to the questions, it's not that I'm going to be asking you to answer this, or we can have a general discussion, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to finish our webinar this evening. But I want to actually get into what is it that brought us this afternoon together as to pay attention to the core beliefs on online education. The very first thing that all of us need to remember is that courses should be instructor-led. And why is that? Because in an online environment, there must be a consistent teacher presence. Of course, like in this particular scenario where you have more than 150 people, connected at the same time, it's not that practical. But in a real scenario where you have no more than 30 students, which I'm really exaggerating the number, probably this is going to be okay. And that is because we need to keep in mind that you, the instructor, becomes a facilitator. Additionally, the teacher is there to help the students stay on task. In a couple of occasions, for example, when I got into a room and there was no conversation between the people who were there, I managed to, talk to them and say, okay, look, this is what you have to do. Let's try to do it. And if, for example, someone didn't have the material, in this case, the screenshot, so I also facilitated the fact that they could, again, pay attention to the screen and they can create their screenshot. We need to keep in mind that you, as the language trainers, turn into real-time managers. So if you tell your students, you have 5 minutes, you have 6 minutes, make sure that they are 5 minutes and 6 minutes. It is incredible when you start, for example, thinking a little bit about the time that you spend in an online environment, when you're talking about teaching or you're talking about practice, all of a sudden time flies, and then you realize that you haven't covered what you were supposed to. So you need to become a real good time manager. The online educator is there to aid the learner when necessary. And that's why we need to be like visiting, going through every single breakout room in order to help people who might be in need. Anyway, several of you experienced also the fact that I was visiting your breakout rooms because you had requested assistance. And that's great. This is something that obviously this particular platform that we are using today allows you to. Now, the second thing we have to pay attention to is the fact that courses should be student-centered. Because in the traditional lecture-based learning, it's not practical for the virtual environment. If you notice in this particular case, there was no, what I would call, lecture time in which something was being explained to you. Not at all. It was, okay, you as part of my group as students came into the class to practice something very specific. In other words, you teachers serve as real educational coaches and what I call not preachers. And what I mean by preachers is you speaking and speaking and speaking like if you were, sorry for making this comparison, like giving a sermon to your students. And that's not what we are expected to, okay? On the other hand, we need to keep in mind that learners take part of challenging activities designed by you, the instructors. So they have to be a little bit challenging depending on the level they are. Obviously, if you pay attention to what you were doing, there were only A1 Cepher students who were supposed to be doing activities like the one that we were performing today. Additionally, students are provided with effective guidance and instructions. So see, if students get into the breakout room not knowing what to do, we were not effective in guiding them, which means the instructions were not clear. So you have to be very specific, you have to be very clear, and you probably have to lower your English in such a way that students will pay attention, will understand what you are saying. In other words, use your students' language as much as possible. And quite important is the fact that we have to provide them with quality feedback, and it is a must for students for the student language improvement. If you simply jump from one activity to the next one without providing any feedback, then we're not really making sure that the students are reflecting on their mistakes and they are not really, like, let's put it this way, like improving or undergoing a change in their minds so they can actually use these things more effectively. I'm talking about the grammar and the vocabulary too. Next to pay attention to is that learning should be collaborative in nature. And the idea is to keep in mind that an online language course should contain collaborative tasks everywhere from the beginning to the end. People working with one another. A reading exercise is not necessarily that collaboratively, executed by the students in the class. So it's a better idea, for example, to tell them you have to go, say in this case, go home, read this, and when you come back, we can talk about it, not the other way around. And that is why keeping in mind that not everything is collaborative, we need to keep in mind that pair work is a very good start if we want to foster an online community of learners. Like in any other classroom, students are there to learn, and they want to have this sense of community, feeling that they are part of a group, not that they're just talking to a computer, like most of us might be feeling sometimes when we are, for example, dealing with a webinar like this one. Students also have to participate in small group activities. And there ought to be team projects to boost language production. And finally, learners have to become fluent users of the video conferencing platform used in the course to be able to collaborate effectively. And it's important what you pay attention, because while I was working or actually walking through the different breakout rooms, what did I discover? That some of you obviously had trouble with the platform. Great, because this is exactly what the students face. If they don't know, for example, how to share, guess what? They won't be sharing. If they don't know how to, for example, use some other different tools the platform has, guess what? This is not going to be happening. Which means that part of your teaching in this particular sense is you helping them become fluent users of the platform. In this particular scenario, we're using Zoom. So becoming a Zoom fluent user, it's important, not only for you as the teacher, but also for the student. We also need to keep in mind that a course should maximize participation flexibility. What's the meaning of this? An online course or online courses should be designed to help learners pick out a convenient class schedule for them. Not necessarily the face-to-face classes we have in our places where we work and in our institutions, universities, and schools, whatever, they actually fit what the students need. An online language program should include definitely an LMS, a learning management system that can be administered in such a way that you know what the students are and are not doing. Because a lot of the things that are going to be happening is that a lot of their learning, a lot of their practice is going to be offline. And when I say offline, I'm talking about not necessarily being present in your class, but you should monitor a little bit of what they are doing outside the classroom. Though the language class is a synchronous event, like the one we had, the sample activities that we were, working together, the LMS activities have to be asynchronous. In other words, they should not be taken into the classroom. They should be taken into the classroom in terms of what the content and the vocabulary is, so they can practice on those specific things in the classroom. But not that you are going to be telling them how an exercise is performed. The course design ought to include a set of student attention hours, because sometimes, this is also very important, students don't know what they are doing. And who do they ask? And they should be asking someone that can give them some sort of guidance as well. It could be the teacher, it could be somebody else in the institution that can guide them through the system or can guide them with the grammar and vocabulary. Not necessarily the teacher, but some sort of student attention hours is necessary so we can help those students who are not necessarily into our classrooms. And there must be a clear working student framework for learners to complete LMS class preparation and consolidation activities. What does that mean? You have to tell them what they have to do before and what they have to do after class. If this is not stated, then students probably won't commit to completing what they are supposed to, and they won't comply with the course. We also need to keep in mind that courses or a course should foster information, communication, and technology skills. And I was listening to someone actually talking about that, and we are going back to when students are not able to use the platform. An online course or online courses should fully utilize the online environment to nurture student learning. If students are not able, for example, to effectively use the platform, we might be contributing with a little bit or a lot of anxiety. And the fact that then a student will say, no, I don't want to be in a class like this because I don't know how to use the system. And it is part of our job in this particular environment that we have to help them understand and become, what I said before, fluent users of a platform. In terms of communication, teacher-student communication shouldn't just happen in class. There should be other means to contact each other. If many of your institutions do have, for example, an institutional email, so the email should be like the means for you to get in touch with the students. or any other way that the institution decides is the most convenient for their purposes. But there should be a way to communicate, because it's important to let students know they're doing something okay. They haven't complied with everything they were supposed to have done, for example, on the LMS and so on. So there should be some sort of communication so students can reach you and you can reach students as well, especially if you're going to be working remotely. Class activities should profit from all video conferencing platform features and potential to help learners collaborate. Once again, we're going back to the fact that what I was mentioning before of this fluent users of a platform. The more students get to know how the platform works, the more that they can collaborate in more efficient ways. And especially if you're going to be asking, for example, to draw something, and drawing, for example, might be a challenge when you are in an online environment, especially if you're doing that digitally. Language tasks should require students to use inventive thinking skills to promote critical thinking and language production. So we all wish that, for example, in a production activity where students are now using everything that they know, becomes highly inventive because they are contributing not only with the framework that you stated for them, but they can also start promoting their critical thinking to see reflected the language production over there. The course format, the expectations, and the instruction should be clear and concise. What does that mean? That online language courses should be interactive and use the full range of resources and tools offered by the internet. In other words, when someone, your school, or even you design, you ought to think, or you ought to look for aesthetically pleasing resources and course materials. Something that is pleasing to the eye, it's quite nice than having all this, for example, pages cluttered with a lot of different stuff that are very difficult to follow. If you notice, for example, the slides that were intended to be used for the activities were very plain with no more than what is necessary. It's also important that, assuming that some of you are already part of on an online program, or you're thinking of getting into an online program, institutionally speaking, before enrolling the students, it is important to make sure that they know what is expected of them. And by that, we need to consider a lot of different things. What kind of expectations are we talking about? How much time they have to commit every week? Because most of the things that they're going to be doing, probably they have to do those things by themselves. They're not going to be working with someone. All right? It's not like coming into the face-to-face class, the traditional class where students are provided with everything. Here we have more autonomous learners who self-regulate themselves and go into trying to continue learning beyond the classroom environment. And that is why it's always very important to inform learners how they have to commit to the course and to the class, and how they are expected to be graded through the course. If this is not happening, we can get into a lot of different trouble when students start dropping out of the course. And that's exactly what we don't want them to be doing, correct? So pretty much this is what was intended to pay attention to in terms of the core beliefs. So if you notice, there are 6 different core beliefs that I wanted you to be exposed to. And it's quite nice that all of you experienced, many of you for the first time, those things that a lot of students actually experience when they are in a virtual classroom for the first time. I would like to know if there are any questions. Maybe Roberto and Mark can help me a little bit with this. If there are any questions that need to be addressed.
I've seen a few questions coming through, and I thought I found one that was really interesting. A teacher asked, she said, we barely need explanation. we are almost supposed to know about this language. What about low levels? So I think a couple of remarks about flipped learning and the flipped model might be appropriate here.
Well, that's very true. Let's keep in mind that, for example, thank you, Mark, that the fact of what I was sampling with you, I'm talking about like the sample class that I was trying to conduct with you, is that most of the time, we're going to be dealing obviously with the students whose level is quite low. The example that I was giving you was for an A1 student who is obviously developing his or her language. In the scenario where flipped learning is obviously used, we need to keep in mind that the students are first working on the LMS, the learning management system, that probably can be some sort of repository of different activities that the students have to perform before they actually get into the class. And then when they come into the classroom, they actually get to work. It's not about, again, like when I said to you, it's not about the traditional way of teaching where you get into the classroom, you start obviously, teaching a very specific point with the presentation, and then you get into the practice, and then you go into the production using some sort of communicative frame, correct? This first part, it's something that we are trying to give students through an LMS. They can get exposed to something before they come to class. They can play with it. They can try to understand it. They can make inferences and then get into the class and try out whether they are understanding or not. Of course, there might be moments during the class where you, as the teacher, you need to say, okay, let's stop here for a moment because some extra explanation is needed. And there is nothing wrong with that. It is okay. What is not okay is simply to forget about giving students feedback in order to help them become better users of a specific structure or a specific piece of vocabulary. Okay. Any other question, Mark, Roberto?
I did see one. Now that you're talking about feedback, someone was asking what are some strategies to give feedback in the online environment?
Okay, I guess there is something important that all of us need to keep in mind. As teachers, and depending on the levels that you are teaching, you have already become experts. And when I say experts, I'm talking about that you already know and you can predict the kind of mistakes the students are going to be making. By saying that, definitely we can have even preset pieces of, in this case, feedback that can be provided to students. Of course, you need to get to know first what kind of students you have in the class, but for sure, anyone who is teaching, for example, the first courses in a program, you already know what you're bound to find in terms of mistakes being made by the students. But again, what is important is that the students need to pay attention to it. And sometimes maybe a little bit of concept checking after the feedback is provided can help the students really understand what they are supposed to correct to become better users of a given structure or pieces of vocabulary. Okay?
And we have another interesting question here. Someone was asking about the kind of aesthetics. So they were saying, what do you think about colors versus simple backgrounds in the presentations or in videos? What are some recommendations as far as the visuals that you provide your students?
Thank you, Mark. Definitely there is something important in connection to visuals. I mean, what is something that should be, or what we should consider aesthetically pleasing to the eye? Okay, definitely I'm not into anything in connection to aesthetics, design, and like interior design or that kind of thing. But there are things that definitely, as I'm saying to you, when you show a page and you have a PowerPoint and there is too much information, pictures or something like that, that is something that is going to distract the student or confuse the student. So a plain page with something very specific and direct to the point that includes no distractors, it's something that we should consider aesthetically pleasing to the eye. Okay? Any other question, Mark?
Yeah, we had a couple more. There was a participant asking about one-on-one teaching. So if he's used to giving classes one-on-one, kind of tutorial type classes, would that translate quite well to an online environment?
I wouldn't say that this is not possible, but obviously you as the instructor, you will need to play the role of another student so both can get into the exercises and participate at the same level. What I'm trying to say is, if an activity that you are designing for a one-to-one class, right? What is going to be happening over there is the fact that you need to keep in mind that you need to be at the level of your student so you can help him become, again, a good user of a given structure or piece of vocabulary or vocabulary in general. What I'm trying to say again is that you need to take the role of a student. So for example, when I said to you in the activities, okay, student A, you are this, student B, you are this, then you have to take the role of that student and then switch with the partner, meaning with the student, so both of you can actually work on the exercise. Because in the end, what matters is what the student is supposed to be learning in this particular case.
We have we have quite a few questions regarding technical aspects of Zoom, but there was one question here which I think is really important and worth addressing. The person said, how do we carry out, what do we do if many of our students do not have the technological devices to join the class?
That's what we were saying towards the end, that in terms of what is supposed to be expected of the student needs to be stated and explained to them. In other words, if a student does not have the device, either a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop, or even a PC to join the class, of course, this person cannot join the class. So that's why in terms of enrollment, when I was mentioning that thing, it has to be clearly stated to them. On top of that, we also need to keep in mind that distance education is something that is not necessarily for everyone. Distance education is for certain people and not for everyone. And that's something that we need to keep in mind because the commitment is different. The exposition to the language in this case is also different, and the student needs to be ready to comply with these specific requirements. So not having the device is a problem. Not having the skills to use the device is another problem. Correct?
Yeah, I think obviously we're in some pretty extreme circumstances right now.
Correct.
But under most circumstances, people who sign up for an online course intentionally should have the devices and the expectations should be made clear to them. So
Exactly.
I can also see that we have tons and tons of questions regarding Zoom itself. And there was even a suggestion, why don't you guys do another webinar to teach us how to use Zoom? So maybe we can take that into consideration.
Sure. I guess we can take that into consideration for future webinars or something like that. For sure. I mean, this is an excellent tool that we can be using, and it's quite effective. That's the fact about it. Okay, maybe we can have a couple of more questions before we close our session, Mark.
Yep, I saw quite a few questions about timing. What kind of timing would you recommend, or how do you go about setting time limits for the small collaborative sessions, the breakout sessions?
Excellent question. And the fact is that
John, I think
okay.
you're muted.
No, I'm okay. Yeah, all of a sudden something happened. But what I was saying to you before is we need to, before answering the question, you need to ask yourselves the following question. How much time do you have to cover a number of different objectives? In other words, if you have, for example, 2 hours to cover an objective, how many exercises in terms of pair work, teamwork, or so on, you want the students to be exposed to? For example, in some of the classes that I was teaching for a Peruvian university, in which we had classes for 2 hours, believe it or not, we teachers, because it was not just me, we have to comply with 8 different activities, 4 the first hour and 4 the first hour, which meant that we have to be changing activities every 15 minutes. And we have to work on a cycle. And the cycle was simple: explaining, having the students work, and once again, going for the feedback. Explain what the next activity is, going for the practice, and then the feedback, and so on. Was it effective? It was effective, yes, because then the students also get to understand that they need to also keep track of time. It's not just about me, the instructor. And that's why, for example, at least in Zoom, you have the option of telling them, you have 1 more minute before, for example, the breakout room session is over. And when that was over, then the students were able to move to a different, activity. Pretty much like what we were doing here. Okay? So keep that in mind. How much time do you have for something? And then decide how many activities, and then set the time, and then decide how you're going to be obviously creating this activity for the students. And then eventually, then you would set like your own time limits. Okay,
And
any other
so
question?
I think those were pretty much the most salient questions that I saw in the chat. There were, again, quite a few questions about specific technical aspects of Zoom, but I think we addressed the ones that are most relevant to online teaching.
Okay, excellent. Well, people, I really want to thank you all for your patience, your participation, and your commitment to teaching. And that's why you're here, despite of the facts that we have, currently happening all across this planet, correct? I really want to thank you. And if you need any further assistance, well, here you have my contact information. You can find me over here, or you can write to me directly over here. We really want to thank you for your participation. Before, obviously, we finish our session this evening, Mark has some other announcements and something else that he needs to inform you about. Okay?
Thank you so much, John. And I see some cameras open. Let's see a round of applause, at least visually, for Jonathan. That was awesome. That was our inaugural PD Talk online. So we hope to be able to do this more often in the future. I'm going to send you in the chat again. I already put it in there, but I'm going to put it in there several more times since the chat is filling up quickly. We have a survey that I would love you to fill out. By participating in this survey, you're going to give us feedback about the event, but we also will have your full name and your email address in order to send you a digital certificate of participation. So please fill it out with your name the way that you want it to appear on your certificate. So let me put it in the chat one more time. You get it again. And again, we wanted to thank you so much for that. I heard from some people that my voice was a little bit choppy at the beginning. And I was explaining a couple of things that I would like to just reiterate. Are you able to see my PowerPoint? Can I get a thumbs up in the video if you're able to see that?
We are, Mark.
We are, okay, great. So we wanted just to remind you that our National Conference for Teachers, which was scheduled for May of this year, due to the whole events that we're currently dealing with the coronavirus, had to be postponed. So we put a lot of work into this event, and it was definitely going to be the event of the year for English teachers in Costa Rica and the region. But we have not canceled it. We are moving it to October. It's going to be the first week of October, October 1st and 2nd. And please stay tuned. You will get more information from us about this event coming up soon, how to register, and all of those details. So just wanted you to rest assured, assured that the event will go on as planned. Unfortunately, we had to move it back a couple of months though. So we look forward to seeing you at that event, and of course, seeing you in our next face-to-face PD Talk, and of course, in our next PD Talk online. So with that said, I don't know if anyone else wanted to make a comment from Central Cultural. I guess not. So thanks again. Hope you have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.
Yeah, thank you very much. Get to see you some other time. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Roberto, for the assistance.
Awesome. Have a
course.
wonderful weekend. And remember, stay safe and stay at home if you can.